Welcome to my live show. It's great to have you with me this afternoon or this morning. So grateful for the opportunity. Hopefully you enjoyed the new setup with the countdown timer and also my live show introduction. And I'll be able to explain to you how I did that so that you can potentially incorporate that into your live show. So that's what we're going to be talking about today as I walk you through the steps for you to be able to launch your own live show at your school, and also consider how you could implement your own webinar series. We'll spend most of the time on our live show format and how that can work. And I'm going to show you some examples along the way. So looking forward to that opportunity to be able to highlight for you how you can do your own live show. So as we're having people join in, as we've done before, feel free to tell us where you're from, what school you're representing, and also your location. So we certainly would love to see who is joining in with us on this live show today. You may hear some background noise out here. For some reason, they decided to trim the trees in our complex here. So if you hear some shredding of the tree branches, that's what's going on. But I did a test earlier, and it didn't seem like it was affecting the live show at all. So hopefully that'll be fine with you. But again, feel free to tell us where you're located, the school that you're representing. Certainly would love to hear from you as we begin this live show training. I'm going to have another live show next week, and so I'm going to be highlighting for you what the topic is. I have some great guests lined up for you next week, and we're going to be talking about 12 growth mindsets during this enrollment crisis. So very important topic, and so have some great guests that are going to be highlighting this conversation next week at 12 o'clock Eastern time. So make sure that you plan to join in, because that'll be a great opportunity to be part of that conversation, which is all relevant to what we're experiencing now. So again, appreciate you joining in. So if you want to share with us where you're located, where you're from, I would love to just hear from you. Heather's here from Upper Canada College in Toronto. So great to have you, Heather. And hopefully your weather's warming up. It's June. And so in the north, certainly you're experiencing some great temperatures. Here in Florida, it's warm. So we've had a few days where we escaped the humidity, which is nice, but I hear it's coming back, and it will be with us throughout the entire summer here in Florida. So grateful that you've joined us, Heather, and that you can be part of this live show training today. So again, looking forward to our conversation. I want to talk to you about how we can be involved, how you can be involved in setting up your own live show at your school, because I think it's a very important strategy to consider, and it's one that I want to walk you through, and I've tried to demonstrate for you what that can look like based upon my interactions with my live show along the way. So before we jump into my presentation and what I'm going to be highlighting for you during our time, just want to welcome a few others. Allison's joining in. Hey, Allison. It's great to have you from Forest Lake Academy in Apopka, Florida. Had the opportunity to work with Allison several years ago. Margot's here from Montessori International in Annapolis, Maryland. Emily's here from Covenant Christian Academy in Peabody, Massachusetts. And Lisa's here from Timothy Christian in New Jersey. And I'm currently working with Lisa and the team there at Timothy Christian. So grateful for the opportunity that I've had to work with you all. And Courtney's here from FACS. So great to have you, Courtney. She was a guest in our show a few weeks ago as we talked about marketing to millennials. So a very important conversation that we had with Courtney and Jacqueline during that time. And if you're a FACS school, I'm going to be doing some webinars in July and August as part of their webinar series to talk about enrollment and marketing strategies. So now, before we jump in, last week I actually was able to take my first trip post-COVID-19. And so I actually conducted a 2-day site visit with a school in Atlanta area, and a great opportunity to be able to meet with their team and meet with parents and be able to begin the process of working with them and assessing their enrollment and marketing effort along the way. So Alice is here from Girls Preparatory School in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Great to have you here, Alice. Alice, I don't know if you wouldn't know this because I haven't shared my personal story, but my parents met and they were married in Cleveland, Tennessee. So that's not too far from where you're located in Chattanooga there. So little side story of my upbringing and the history of my family. I actually was born in Tennessee, but I don't have the Southern accent at all. Spent most of my life in Michigan before moving here to Florida back in 2001. So let's jump in. And if you have questions along the way, feel free to ask. And you can type those questions in the chat box. And certainly would love to hear from you as we talk about this important subject here. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus in on how you can launch your school's live show and webinar series. And what I find out there is that schools aren't typically using Facebook Live or other live platforms to be able to produce a show. Typically what I'll find is that schools are using the live platforms to live stream events. So you may have just gone through your graduation, for example, and you would have live streamed your event through Facebook Live and other channels. But typically I'm not seeing it used in a school setting in more of an interactive format like what I can do today and demonstrate for you through my Facebook Live show. So we're going to walk through these two key strategies, how you can launch your own school's live show and also your webinar series. And I want to just talk through the steps for you because I want to put it in plain, simple terms of how you can actually go about implementing the strategy within your school. And at the end of the first portion where I'm talking about your live show, I'm going to show you some examples of other schools that I've been working with and how they've implemented a live show there at their school. So let's jump in. And I think the main platforms to consider would be Facebook and YouTube. Of course, you can live stream on Instagram, but my focus as I'm coaching schools right now is to work on Facebook and YouTube. And so actually today I am live streaming to 3 different channels. So I am on my public Enrollment Catalyst Facebook page, probably where you tuned in. Also, I have a private group. It's my Enrollment Catalyst Inner Circle. And that's for any schools that I'm working with or have worked with in the past. It's about 500 school leaders in that group. Again, you have to work with me to be part of that group. And so I'm live streaming to that channel and then also to my YouTube channel. So with the platform that I'm using, StreamYard, you're able to broadcast to multiple platforms. And so that certainly could be a consideration. But I see that Facebook and YouTube are your main channels. And let me just say this at the outset, that I think one of the important considerations for using live broadcasts like this is that it exponentially expands your reach online. And that's essentially what you want. When you put out a typical post, depending upon the number of people who like your Facebook page or follow you, that's going to be limited in terms of the reach. But when you do a live video or a live broadcast, it's going to exponentially increase your reach. In some cases, what I've seen is it's at least 3 to 4 times greater than what a typical post will provide. And so as you can see, whenever someone goes live, Facebook is pushing that out to the audience. And so I think it's a great opportunity to look at ways to extend your reach. And you can do this for free. Certainly there's time involved in setup, and you might need some tools like a light set or a background. But for the most part, there's going to be little cost. In comparison to doing Facebook advertising, for example, you're going to have to spend money to be able to get your ads or your boosted post out there for people to see. So this automatically extends your reach to your audience. And that's essentially what you want as you're working with your audience and trying to reach your community. So I think one of the first steps, and I'm going to walk through 9 steps here, is that you need to select your studio platform. So one of the limitations of Facebook Live in and of itself is that if you just go through Facebook Live, you can only broadcast from one location. You can't bring other people into the mix. You can't necessarily bring graphics and other things onto the screen. All the things that I'm doing today, it really isn't possible through just the general Facebook Live broadcast. So I think it's important to look at what you can utilize in terms of having a studio platform And that would be a third-party studio that would give you that opportunity to bring in guests. So, as you watched previous live shows that I've done, I brought in different guests from, all over the country, and they've been able to share their thoughts and perspectives during that live show. And so you'll be able to do the same. Now, from my perspective, in my research, there's been 2 live stream platforms that I've used. And so there's many more that are out there. So you just have to do your research, but I can talk specifically about these 2. So when I first ventured into using Facebook Live and live broadcast for my show, I started using a program called Be Live. Now, Be Live is great, and I have some schools that are using Be Live. Its limitation, though, is that you can only broadcast to one channel, and it has to either be Facebook or YouTube. So it was a great way for me to get started because I was just testing it, and I wanted to focus my platform on Facebook. And so to be able to broadcast there, I actually started in my Inner Circle private group, and then I expanded from there to my public page. But like today, I wanted to be able to push out my live stream to several channels at the same time. So that's actually what steered me away from continuing to use Be Live. And so that's where I've gone to using a program called StreamYard. So StreamYard has more bells and whistles to it than Be Live does. So it allows you to broadcast up to multiple platforms, and you can choose your package. So they have a basic package, kind of a medium rate package where you can broadcast to a couple channels, and then they have the premium package where you can broadcast to 3 or more channels. And so that's actually what I'm paying for. I think my rate is $59 a month. So it's a minimal investment to give you the platform and the tools to be able to reach your audience on multiple platforms. So if you may decide that you only need to reach one platform. You can't do Instagram with any of these programs, so that would be a separate deal, going live through the Instagram Live. But using StreamYard, for example, not only are you able to broadcast to multiple channels at the same time, you're also able to have more than 3 guests. So Be Live will only allow you to have 3 guests on your broadcast. StreamYard would allow you to have, I think it's up to 9 or 10 that I can have in my waiting room, and I can bring them in and out of the presentation. So there's more capabilities. In fact, one of the examples I'll show you a little bit later, Ryan Abramson at Holy Ghost Prep uses StreamYard. And one of the things that he did in the last month or so is he did an athletic assigning event. I think he had 17 athletes that they were doing live signings, but because they couldn't gather all in the same location, he was able to bring, the signing events from their homes in and out of the presentation. So it's a great way to be able to have that interactive and be able to bring them in and out of that presentation along the way. So Heather's mentioning that you can live stream through Zoom, and definitely, that's a possibility where you could do that. I'm not sure that you can broadcast to multiple channels at the same time, and I'm not sure that you have all these capabilities with the graphics and all that you could use. I've just found that a studio platform like StreamYard, this is what it's designed to do, and so it seems to be a very effective tool to utilize. So the first step is determining what your platform should be. And I've given you a couple examples. Secondly, I think it's important to determine what your content focus is. So in the beginning, I mentioned that typically what I find in schools is that we're live streaming events, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think it's a great opportunity to consider conversations that you can have with your community about your school. And I think that's one of the easiest approaches to implement, as you could actually have a regular interview series, just like I've done, and be able to interview people from your community. So you have a lot of great people at your school community, from faculty to coaches to administration to parents, students, alumni. The list goes on, and so you could really fill up your shows talking about their experiences at your school. They could be topical in nature. They could interview them about their personal lives and how they're able to bring that, interact with your community there at the school as one of your outstanding educators. You could also, You could also do a series of broadcasts on key topics. There might be issues where you want to discuss. Like, for example, let's think about where we're at right now. COVID-19, we have the reality of what's going to happen this next year. So once your school has worked through your task force and identified what your approaches are, this could be a great opportunity to have that discussion with members of your task force, talking about what you're going to be doing and how you're going to be approaching the new year. So that would be one example of content focus that you could have. But this is an important step. It's considering what the gist of your live show will be as you are trying to broadcast and reach out to your community. One of the earlier adopters is the Village School of Naples. And so you may have heard me talk about Dennis Chapman and his team. In fact, they were on one of my earliest shows, and we talked about some of this. And Dennis has been doing a live stream broadcast every Sunday evening at 6 p.m. that he calls Leading from the Lanai. And he has a series of interviews that he's done where he's been featuring members of his community, from students to parents to faculty to administrators, really highlighting what's been going on there at the school. And it's been a great format to utilize that. And one of the other benefits too is that whenever you go live, the recording of your broadcast is left on your Facebook page. And so it's there for people to be able to view. You could potentially boost that. You can download that. You can also, after you download it, you could upload it to your YouTube channel. Or in my case, like today, I'm broadcasting to YouTube as well. So the recording will automatically be there, so I don't have to go through that process of adding in that recorded format. Number 3 is to schedule a regular day and time. And so I think this is an important step too, is you don't want to just all of a sudden decide to go live. You want some planning to go into it, and you want some expectation that this is the time and the day that you're going to go live. So you want to let people know that this is coming. So I would be an advocate for putting in place that regular day, that regular time that you're going to have your live show. So like in my case, I'm doing this for the most part every Thursday at 12 o'clock, as long as my schedule will allow. And so you have that expectation that I've created that I'm going to be live during that time. So when's the best time to go live? I think you have to experiment with that. So it might be during the noon hour, as your parents and community are on a lunch break. So that's possible. And then also you might consider doing something in the evening. And so you could consider both options. You might reach different groups along the way. And so that would be a consideration. James, you're asking the question, what video platform was that on the last slide? That was the Village School of Naples and their live broadcast that they're doing through Be Live. So they started with Be Live and they've continued to use that just like I did in the beginning, but then I switched gears and I'm using StreamYard for my platform. And there's other ones out there that you can access. So number 4 is to set up and practice your show. So practice is important. You saw me today launch my countdown video and also the intro video that I just had produced. And I'll share with you how those were put together. But I practiced that last night and this morning because I wanted to make sure that that would come off as seamless as possible. And so I have a test group that I call Rick's Test Group, and my wife is part of that, and a couple key friends. And so they're the only people that will see that live practice in that group because it's set up as a private group. So I would not practice on your public page. I would practice in a private group. And so that's an important step in the process. And it's easy to set up a group on Facebook, and you can have those practice sessions so that you can feel comfortable. You could bring in a guest to your show and you could practice what it's like to interview that guest. And so you become comfortable and familiar with the tools, the steps that you need to take, the options that you have during a broadcast like this. So I think it's also important to consider your setting, the background, the lighting. Like right now I have in my office, when I do a live stream, I'll set up my stand-up desk, and I have a backdrop that I'll set up as well, because I don't want to show you the clutter that's in my office. And then I have a couple lights over here. I took a picture of my office setup for my live stream broadcast that you can see on my Enrollment Catalyst Facebook page. But I see plenty of live streams where it shows the natural background. You just want to make sure that there's not a bunch of clutter back there. And so you might want to go with this type of a setup, or you have your background. You certainly don't want to be facing a window where the sunlight's coming through and it looks like you have a halo, anything like that. So it would be important for you to consider all those different areas. Now, the countdown timer and the video intro, which I just added, I actually used the program or a website that's called Fiverr, Fiverr.com. And you may not be familiar with Fiverr, but essentially it's a website that connects you to freelancers around the world. And you can do all kinds of projects. I had my first exposure with Fiverr when I produced my Net Promoter Score survey video. And I had a videographer do this. I think he was from India. And so he designed that and put that together for me. All I had to do was write the script, and it was very affordable. All kinds of options on there. So I was looking recently at two different ideas. One would be to have an intro like you saw here in the beginning. And so I paid a guy from Pakistan to be able to design that for me, produce it. I think it cost me $25 for that intro video that you saw in the beginning. And then I also had the countdown timer done. That was about another $60. So less than $100. I had the countdown timer and also the intro video that was produced for me. And I think they're great. And I'm going to add to the mix as I go along and have other options. But it's a very affordable solution. And so, you're looking at ways to be able to save money and have a great, showcase online with your live show. And so you could utilize a service like that. I'm going to reference that a little bit later as well when I show you some Facebook pages. This is my setup. So I just took a picture this morning. So you see the screen behind me. You see my stand-up desk that I have here. And then I have the light box, or the two light kits that I purchased. Purchased all this off of Amazon. So there's all kinds of opportunities to be able to purchase lights and backdrops, and you can do green screen if you want. So you can really get sophisticated with your production. I've spent less than probably everything less than $300-400 on all of this. So it's not a significant investment. And so it's something that you could utilize along the way as you set up your own live show within your school. Number 5 is an important part, and that's marketing your show. So, I'm talking to an audience and we're interested in marketing and growing our enrollment. Well, it's important that it's, you take time to market your show. And so, hey, Janice, great to have you here from ASAP. So it is wonderful for you to be here. I was actually just in my training this morning, getting ready for the ASAP Summer Institute, which is virtual in July. And so I'm going to be presenting a workshop at that session. So if you're looking for professional development, you may want to check out ASAP Summer Institute. Great opportunity for you to continue to grow and expand. And David, great to have you here. I had the opportunity to work with David several years ago. And he asked the question about, am I using the camera built into my computer? And the answer is yes. So it's working off of my Mac. This is a new Mac that I purchased about 6 months ago, MacBook Pro, and seems to be working fine. I do have another upgraded webcam that I could use, and I may try out in the future along the way. And I love you too, ASAP and Janice Crampton, and all the work that you guys do to help schools all over the world. So marketing your show, this is an important step. So I talked about scheduling that day and time for your show, which is important, but you need to let people know about it. So give them the information about your show, publish it in your blog or your news post, on your website, send it out in email. That's what I do. And in fact, I'll have a new blog post going out tomorrow that'll talk about my live show for next week. And so I'll highlight that again for you at the end. But that's been my pattern of sending it out through my blog. And my blog's set up automatically where whenever a new blog post is put out there on my website, it's automatically sent out to my subscriber list through MailChimp. But you could also email your parents, your prospective parents, your constituency, let them know about your live show. And it's not a one-time hit. It's actually where you would be involved in letting them know about each show, because every show is going to be different in terms of who your guests are along the way. You can set it up as a Facebook event. That's another way to drive interest. You certainly want to post it on your social media channels. In my case, I'm putting that out there on Facebook, on my public page, and also my private group. And I'm also posting it on LinkedIn and putting out some tweets on Twitter. And then you can consider boosting or advertising through Facebook, for example, to put that live show out there so that people know. You want people tuning in along the way so you can build your audience and they can benefit from the topics and conversations that you're sharing. Number 6 is to plan your interview and prep your guests. And so, again, I like the interview approach. That's the way that I've been using my live show. Today is a little bit different because it's more of a training and talking you through how you can apply this and use this at your school. But I think it's a great way to be able to invite guests to your show. In fact, Janice is in the audience, and she was one of the show members that I had earlier on as we talked about leading admissions. And so how I prepped her and Ryan and Steve, who were part of that particular show, is I put together a list of questions. And I sent my guests the questions in advance so that they would know where I was headed in the conversation. I don't think there has to be much more prep than that, and where you're actually letting them know about the questions you're going to ask, the topics that you're going to discuss, and then you're engaging with them in the conversation along the way. So, and obviously you can choose specific guests to be on a specific show on a topic. So let's think about this. Maybe one of the areas you want to talk about is your athletic program. So you could have your athletic director, a coach, and maybe a student athlete, and you can have a conversation about your athletic program. You could do the same about fine arts. You could talk about your pivot to distance learning and how that's worked and the improvements that you're going to make. So maybe you're interviewing your dean of academics and your IT director. So as you think about your content, you're prepping your guests and the overall flow to the conversation. And typically, if I was interviewing a group or a small number of people in my live show, I would have put in all the topics or questions in headings. You've seen that before in my live shows where I'll display that on the screen. It just keeps everyone in focus about what we're talking about and how that's working along the way to guide our conversation. I think Janice is asking, she said, Rick, you've used Facebook a great deal and your audience is accustomed to this as your platform. What is your advice to people, schools who have used other platforms so that they transition to this and get used to it? So it's determining where your platforms are. As I was mentioning in the beginning, StreamYard allows you to broadcast to multiple channels. So like today, I'm on 3 channels. So my main Facebook page, my Facebook group, my YouTube channel. I have an application into LinkedIn so that I can also broadcast to LinkedIn. And so I can be in multiple places at the same time. That's one of the downsides of Be Live if you're to use that as your platform. So it's thinking about your audience, thinking about how to best reach them. Certainly with Facebook, you would be reaching the community that follows you. Your parents, maybe some grandparents, people from the community. Every school that I work with, I always do a survey and I ask the parents what platforms they're using. Facebook continues to be the #1 platform. Instagram is second. So those are the important platforms to be able to consider. Instagram would be a different deal in terms of how you're using that to be able to reach your audience. So plan your interview, plan and help set up your guest. And number 7 is set up your show in your studio. And so again, that's where you're setting up the specifics, where you might be adding in banners, text and headlines, questions, working on your videos, your screen shares along the way. All that's something that you could set up in advance. And then when I invite a guest to come onto my show, all I do is send them a link to be able to join my specific show. So in StreamYard, it's a unique link to that specific show, that broadcast that I've set up. And I ask my guests to show up about 30 minutes before I go live. And that's where we make sure that all the technology is working correctly. I can review with them some tips. We can go through the overall flow. They can ask questions and be comfortable. I found that that's enough time to be able to work with my guests on my shows to make sure that they're ready for the live show. And then number 8 actually, is to go live. And that's really the last step. We'll talk about number 9 in a second, but that's the last step that you need to take for getting ready to actually go live, is to push the button and start your broadcast. And so that's where I think the fun begins. So you're in front of your audience. People are signing on. They're listening to your live talk, your live interviews. It's important that you engage your audience. So I try to do that when you sign on and you tell me what school you're from, giving you a friendly hello and a shout out on my live show. Whenever you have questions along the way, I like to interact with those questions. I think it's also important to consider that this is an opportunity to have a conversation. Now, certainly you could do it like I'm doing today and have a presentation or a training, and that's totally fine. But in your conversations with guests, think about it as that. It's more of a conversation rather than you're in front of this live audience that's peering in and watching you. So there might be a little anxiety about that, of what is it like to go live? And that's where, again, you can test it along the way and explore and see how that works. And I think it can be a great tool that you could use. And then number 9, what do you do after the show? So that's where I think it's important for you to download the recorded file if you haven't automatically streamed it to YouTube, for example, because I want to make sure that my YouTube channel has all my recorded videos. So you would be uploading it. You can also use Facebook's clip editor. And so when a live video is produced, you can go into your video files and you can actually clip segments from your live show. So let's say I did a show that's an hour in length, and that's been my typical norm with our conversations that we've had. But you can clip out sound bites or smaller segments, so you can repurpose your content from your live show. And that gives you additional video that you can utilize along the way. And so I highly recommend that you consider that. Now let me switch out of here, and I'm gonna actually see if I can share with you some Facebook pages from other schools that have done some live streams. So you're gonna see me looking over at my side monitor over here, and I'm gonna be able to pull up my and share my screen from a couple different examples along the way of some other schools that have used Facebook Live and other live streams. So I'm going to share my screen here. So there's just a simple process that I go through, and I'm just going to start with sharing the first school that I worked with and how they were using this platform. So this is the Village School of Naples in Florida. And if you go to their website, you're able to see their virtual admissions center, which is a nice example of what schools have done during this season of COVID-19. But if you scroll down like I'm doing, you'll find here's the virtual fireside chats leading from the lanai. And these are the recorded live streams that Dennis Chapman has done. So if I click on this, I'll see the thumbnail. And again, he's using Be Live to be able to broadcast. And so all of them are here, and you can watch the recordings. You can see the variety of different guests that he had, from teachers to students to the fine arts department along the way. So that's just another example of how a school has been utilizing it And it could be the head of school. It doesn't have to be the head of school who is using that. It could be the admissions director. It all kind of depends upon who has the personality and drive to be able to be out there sharing about the school in this live type of format. Here's the Brook Hill School. They're located in Bullard, Texas. They're a day and boarding school. And one of their first live broadcasts was what they were calling Talk With Me Tuesday. And in this one, it's an interview conversation with their admissions team. So it's being led by Jamie, who's on the left there. And she's talking with 3 other members of their admissions and marketing team about the advantages of the Brook Hill School. And they've done some other ones, so you can scroll through their Facebook page and you can be able to see some of the other videos that they've done, as well as live stream broadcasts along the way that may be a consideration for you to think about their format. So let me jump off of that one, and I'm going to take you to another one that I can share with you. And so let me just set this one up. We're going to take a look here at Granville Christian Academy. So Granville is a small school, just over 200 students. They have a full-time admissions director and a part-time marketing director. And from my perspective, if they can pull this off, you guys can pull this off at your school. So, looking at what they did through my recommendation to them, we actually set up the concept of a blitz week. So they wanted to blitz their community about the great things that are happening within their school environment. And so they actually, for 5 days, Monday through Friday, they did a series of 2 each day, 2 live shows. They're about a half an hour in length. And so you see their schedule there that they had, that they published. They did it at 10 in the morning and 6 o'clock. Now, if Katrina, who did all these live shows, if she was here, she would talk about how it was a little too much. She was ready for that week to be over. So you don't want to necessarily overdo it. But you see here, Katrina's in the left box there, and she's interviewing, in this case, their student services coordinator. And, you can keep scrolling through. Here she's interviewing their team where they're talking about spiritual life at the school. So various aspects of school life. Here she is interviewing their principal. And so they're using the live stream platform of Be Live, because they're just broadcasting to the one channel along the way. So that's just an example, and you can go back through, and I'll add some of these links to the comment section after the show so that you can go back and you can access that along the way. Let me show you another school as well. And as I'm pulling this up, I think this school is going to be Christian Academy of Knoxville, Tennessee. So Christian Academy is a large school, nearly 1,000 students. And they did the same type of concept where they wanted to do a blitz week, and they just did 1 live stream a day. And so they had their live show every day. They did it alternating from noon and 7 o'clock. Again, they wanted to reach people at different times. And so you see that they did one of their conversations on transferring to CAK, Christian Academy in Knoxville. It was actually an interview with a parent and a student. Here you see an example of Missy. She's in the admissions office, and she's conducting the interview with the team there. Here's Julia, and she's interviewing their band director as one of their live shows. So you see a common theme now in terms of the format and the approach of how these schools are using this. Let me show you one other, and that's going to be Ryan up at Holy Ghost Prep. And so Ryan has done a great job with his focus on using StreamYard and live stream videos. So if you go to the Holy Ghost Prep, which is in the Philadelphia area, and you click on videos, you'll see their videos that they've recorded and produced live. So you see this one here on the left. This is Ryan. I'm circling around his head here. I don't know if he's online and listening in, but he did a great, he's done actually several great ones. He's the one who did the athletic signing with bringing in all the different athletes. So you can actually go and you can see it right up here, the athletic spring signing day, and see how he did it. The parent town hall meeting it was a great approach. He has some pre-recorded videos that he had done in the beginning. You'll have to watch the beginning because it shows their head of school and their principal eating cheesesteaks, which is obviously famous in Philadelphia. And but he's able to engage in conversations with his parent town hall meeting along the way. He did a spring preview event. So he did recorded segments that he was able to bring into his live show and be able to give that preview event. Now, the downside of doing it on Facebook Live is that you don't necessarily know who's tuning in and watching like you would on a webinar format or platform. So just a consideration. While we're up here, let me just show you a couple other things here before we move on. And we're going to talk just a few minutes about webinars, because all this that I'm talking about here with your live show really feeds into the idea and the concept of what you could do with your webinar series at your school. So let me see if I can find. Oh, here it is. What I'm going to show you is the website that I mentioned earlier. It's called Fiverr, and it's where you can connect in with freelancers around the world, and you can do lots of different projects. So you may be looking for something to be done. Maybe it's an ebook to be designed. Maybe it's a short video to be put together. All kinds of possibilities. You could enter it into the Find Services search bar here at the top. That's what I did when I wanted to create this intro video for my live stream. And so I found actually this person right here. They did my YouTube intro video that I used here on my Facebook Live show, and they also did my countdown timer. So that's just showing you what I viewed recently to be able to access that. So I highly recommend that you could use a service like this to be able to add some additional support to what you're trying to do and liven it up. So I think there's a great opportunity to be able to utilize Facebook Live, other social media sites to be able to create your live show. Remember, it's going to exponentially expand your reach, which is what you want to have happen. You want to reach more people online. And so by pushing out that live video, the live conversation, you're going to create all kinds of content. You're going to engage with your followers. You can repurpose that content and share it along the way. Let me go back to my presentation that I had that I was sharing with you. And I want to just talk for a moment about webinars, because webinars could be an outflow of your live show. So just as I've done for you today, this is like a webinar, and I've done this to a live audience. So again, the recording will be available and people can watch it later. And so that's one of the beauties of it. But I would recommend that you consider putting together a webinar series. It's where you're talking about specific topics, content. So you guys are probably engaged a lot in watching webinars, whether they're from ASAP or maybe some that I've done or Final Site. Lots of resources that are out there online, and you could spend all your time actually watching webinars. But it's not really a strategy that I see a lot of schools using to reach their parents. But I think it's a good one to consider, because it's hard to get parents to come out on a Tuesday evening at 7 o'clock to listen to, the academic dean talk about the benefits of your high school program. Why not do that in an online format like a webinar series? And so that's one thing I would recommend. Now, you could use a variety of different platforms. So the ones that I see that you could potentially tap into and utilize would be GoToWebinar. So you may be familiar with GoToMeeting. Maybe you've used that. It's a lot like Zoom. It's a platform that I've used a lot of. In fact, I use GoToWebinar for all my webinars that I do, and it works great. Zoom also has a webinar component that you would need to pay for. And it's usually all based upon how many people you want to try to reach for your audience in terms of registrations. I've not used Demio as a platform. Brendan Schneider has mentioned that it's a great platform. That's why I mentioned it here. So you would need to investigate what you feel like is the best platform. I have schools that have certainly used GoToWebinar and Zoom. In fact, I'm working with Chaminade College Preparatory School in California, and they're launching their virtual open house. One of them's this weekend, and another one's the following weekend, and they're using GoToWebinar as their platform. The beauty of a webinar platform is it allows you to be able to orchestrate your registrations. You know actually who is registering for your webinar. There can be reminders that are sent. You know whether they've tuned in live or watched the recording. You can set it up as a live event, or you can do it as an on-demand recording. But there's been a couple schools that I've seen that have used webinars in their strategy. One of them is Horizon Prep, and they're a classical Christian school in the San Diego area. If you go to their website, you will find their area where they highlight webinars and testimonials. So just by going to the site, you see here on the screen, they have, I think, 7 webinars that have been recorded that are available on their website. So, here's one that talks about Parent Survival Guide to the Middle School Years. That sounds like a topic that you would invite people to come to hear at your school, but they've done in the webinar format. So it's always available online for people to be able to access. And whenever someone registers, then you know who that person is. So that creates a potential lead for you that you can follow up with them. They have, other ones here, the educational journey, big benefits of a small school, beyond the grades. So, you can think about the topics that would be relevant to reach your current parents, your prospective parents. Maybe you would start with the content that you already have, that you put together and that you presented in a variety of contexts. And you can utilize that to put it into a webinar series that you could communicate online. Pulaski Academy, I was noticing recently as I was looking at their virtual admission center that they have 3 webinars that are available. Again, these are trying to appeal to prospective parents. Just another way to provide content for them to be able to access and to be able to find out more about your school. And then Newtown Friends School, which is a school that I worked with last year, they had a webinar that they did back in April, and it was all around how families are dealing with the quarantine. And so, again, it was a virtual presentation, and parents could not come in, but I think it's a great opportunity to do this in an ongoing way. I know that Swickley Academy has done some webinar series along the way. And so Brendan Schneider, who you all may be aware of through his work with inbound marketing, he was a guest on one of my shows as well back in April. And so they did a series a few years ago, and you can see the different topics that they were able to highlight. In fact, one of the things that Brendan did for me a few years ago is he did a webinar that's available on my website, how to use webinars and ebooks. So where he talked through exactly the strategy that he had put in place at his school to be able to use webinars to reach parents along the way. So hopefully that helps you think about how you can potentially utilize webinars and a live show. Strongly recommend that at least you think about these 2 strategies and incorporating those into the mix. What I find is that the cost is very minimal, but the return is great because you're reaching your audience in different ways and you're increasing that reach exponentially. So I'd highly recommend that you pursue this. Certainly want to engage with you as I've done along the way if you have any questions. But I want to highlight for you my next show that's coming up. You may be familiar with the National Association of Independent Schools, and they have an independent school magazine. Their most recent edition, I saw an article in there called the 12 Growth Mindsets for the Enrollment Crisis. And I was really intrigued by that article. And reading through that, I was like, wow, this is great. This is wonderful conversation starters for teams. In fact, one of the schools that I've worked with in the past is using this article as a basis for a retreat conversation with their administrative team. Well, anyway, all that to say, I've invited their head of school who wrote the article, Dr. Olaf Jorgensen, to be able to be on the show next week, and two of his team members, Jennifer and Mary Jo. And we're going to talk about these 12 growth mindsets for the enrollment crisis. And so you may want to prep yourself and read the article. You can find that online. I can share that link in the comment section as well. But I would invite you to attend that live stream, that live show next week at 12 o'clock Eastern time, and we'll be highlighting this topic. So, and Natalie is there, and she is commenting. She's actually from Mounts Park Academy in the Twin Cities, and great to have you, Natalie. And she's the one actually that referred to that article about using that as a retreat basis to be able to discuss. And so, and then she's actually mentioned here in the comments that she's starting her show, Free Thinker Fridays. And so I'll be anxious to see your show, Natalie, and to see how that goes along the way. So that's great that you're going to be able to do that. And I hope to see more schools launching into their live show formats along the way to be able to reach your audience. So again, I hope that you can join me next week. And Natalie's also saying that that's such a great article, and it'd be wonderful to be able to interact with the team there and to probe a little bit deeper, with the 12 growth mindsets, because this is something we're all facing as we're thinking about this next year. And, and sometimes we think about all the things that are happening in our environment, and certainly that affects our schools and our enrollments, but it's important that we have a growth mindset. So we need to be actively engaged in focusing in on the enrollment and marketing effort. And that's what that article is all about. So I hope you'll join me next week along the way. So last call for questions. Don't want to delay our format and our time together, but hopefully you've joined the show. Maybe what I'll do is if you didn't get a chance to join in the beginning and you weren't able to see my new intro video, I'm going to actually try to play that for you here so that you can see it if you didn't see it earlier. So there you go. That's my intro video. I need an outro video as well. So as I'm concluding the show, I could have that in place, and that concludes and wraps up our time together. So thanks for joining us. Great show today, and hopefully you appreciate the training that you received. Certainly, if you could indicate that you like the show, click that like button, share some love with me during this time. And if there's anything I can do to help you at your school, I'm glad to do that through my Enrollment Catalyst program. I have my customized approach as well as my virtual program. And so both are great options for schools to consider. So thanks for joining me today. And I look forward to seeing you next Thursday. Same time, same place.